Hey everybody, welcome to Wealth Wednesdays, a new webinar series hosted by Inspired to Invest to discuss all things related to abundance, prosperity, and wealth. Today we've got Monica Jazik joining us from RPI Education, and we'll be going through some questions for the first half of the webinar. And if anyone does jump in to join us, then we'll be opening it up to questions for Q&A at the end. Before we get started, I just want to read a very brief disclaimer. The views represented on this webinar are for general information only and do not constitute investment or other professional advice or an offering of securities. The host and our guests featured on this webinar make no representations as to the performance of any particular investments, and should you decide to make any investments, then you're completely responsible for conducting your own review and analysis. It's highly recommended that you obtain independent legal, accounting, and tax advice from licensed professionals before you make any investments. So how are you today, Monica? Thanks again for joining us.
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. So for anyone that doesn't know you or hasn't tuned into the last couple of financial literacy webinars, maybe you can just briefly talk about your history and how you came around to founding RPI Education with Vaughn.
Sure, no problem. So my name is Monica Jazik. I'm a real estate investment specialist and wealth builder and founder of RPI Education, which is our consulting company where we help other people invest in real estate. But Vaughn and I started this about 15 years ago. We've been active full-time real estate investors, and we started doing this to create wealth for our family so I could be a stay-at-home mom with our 4 kids. And so it really gives us that time, money, freedom in our lives. That's what real estate investing has done for us. And that's what we like to help others achieve, is really to get that time, money, freedom in their lives using real estate and alternative investments.
Yeah. Awesome. Now, one thing that I find is a significant barrier for a lot of people, like they understand the concept of real estate investing, but a lot of people really struggle with things that are holding them back. So it kind of begs the question around what you need to do to frame your mindset the right way in order to feel confident enough to take the first step. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, a pivotal moment that you experienced and how you shifted your mindset so that you could take this step and, really ultimately change your life and change the trajectory for your family as well.
Absolutely. So in order for change to happen, the pain that you experience has to be great enough. So I often find myself, when I'm talking to potential clients, telling myself they're not in enough pain yet. Because comfort is a very, most people are in a comfortable spot. And it's a very dangerous place to be when you're comfortable because you're very reluctant to grow because you're kind of satisfied. You know you could be doing better, but it's not, the pain's not there. The
Yeah.
pain became unbearable for us when my husband was making great money, but he was working a lot of hours. And one day he was working overtime and he was so proud of himself being such a great employee, working all these overtime hours, including Saturdays and Sundays, and getting up at 3 in the morning
Ugh.
to get there and do these things and to realize his check of overtime with over, I think, 15 to 17 hours of overtime that particular week, reduced to what he would have been if he worked at all, because it was all gone in taxes.
Wow.
And that was his pain that he was hurting. He was in his 30s.
Yeah.
Body was aching. And at the equivalent time, we also lost all of our set it and forget it savings in the 2008 economy.
Yeah.
And it was those two things combined where one, he realized trading time for money was not for him anymore, that he wanted to start, really get his money working for him rather than him
Yeah.
working for his money. And then also we realized we need more control of our investments because we were doing everything the traditional way,
Yeah.
like we were supposed to be doing, like we were trained to do. And we lost everything in 2008. So those were the two light bulb moments. And at that moment, the time that it takes to learn a new skill and the risk to really go out and try something different
Yeah.
superseded the results, because I realized at that point, if I do not go to work full time and be a full-time teacher, because I am an A4 qualified teacher, and we have 2 6-figure salaries, that we'll never be able to afford to retire. We'll never be able to make enough money every month, and we'll
Yeah.
never be able to help our kids out with university education. And this
Yeah.
is when the kids were very, very small. And I kind of remember thinking, why am I the financial plan? Like, that's not a healthy society to take 2 6-figure incomes to get by. That's
Yeah.
like just to be able to retire and just to be able to help your kids out. And
Yeah.
so that really was when I knew that we needed to make a dramatic difference. And real estate investing was our vehicle of choice.
So now we'll get into this a little bit later and talk about how you guys got started with your real estate portfolio, especially if you're experiencing such a big setback. But in terms of things like limiting beliefs, how would you suggest that the average person overcomes these if they kind of feel like, no, I can't do this. This is something other people do. Like, what do you tell your students when they're starting out? Maybe they've got beliefs that are holding them back.
Okay, so when you experience the pain to move forward, you really stop caring what other people think. And you really stop caring what these voices in your head tell you about, because that is a pivotal mindset moment to get past
Yeah.
and decide to make that choice. But when you're in that stage, you don't give a damn,
Yeah.
to tell you the truth. You're done. You're like, that's it. I'm over. Like, I don't care. I'm moving forward. And you really are in this temporarily, it's kind of almost like a second win moment that you really need to run with, because that's the time. And from that point on, you need to increase your momentum and stay in that state. And
Yeah.
it never stops. So that's why we have a mindset training in the wealth immersion course that we create, because if you're
Yeah.
not in a state of positivity, motivation, and you're going to be in a reactive state. And so every morning I put at least 2 hours into my morning routine. It takes me 2 hours to wake up, I say. I'm
Yeah.
up at 5 and I am breathing, I am manifesting, I am stretching, I am working, I am reading, and I set the tone for the day. I don't
Yeah.
talk to people, I don't take calls, I don't check social media, I don't talk to my children. That's why it's my time to really develop
Yeah.
that state. So then, like Eckhart Tolle says, if you do not get yourself in this positive, perfect, grateful state, ready to receive all the amazing things that
Yeah.
the day is going to happen to you, and you have to mentally buffer yourself, then you're going to be in a reactive state all day, and you
Yeah.
can't make good decisions when you're in a reactive state. So we have a very, very strict mindset program that we put our students through, but we encourage them, we just use ours as a model and
Yeah.
then encourage them to make it their own. And every successful person does this.
Yeah.
There's not a successful person that walks around in a reactive state or doesn't have some sort of discipline and training. So literally almost every minute of my day is probably pre-planned. And I really have to set that tone intentionally for the day. And that's what people have to decide is it doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter if you're scared. You've got to move past it. The pain, in order to stop that pain, you've got to do something different. It's going to take a
Yeah.
bit of work. And that's why we offer a lot of support in our community too, because you're not alone and
Yeah.
you will feel alone. A fun story, when you're always looking to grow your business and see how you can get more people involved. One thing that we very rarely get from our amazing clients at RPI Education are referrals. And the reason they'll give us amazing testimonials and say their lives are changed and they're
Yeah.
experiencing things they never had before. But it's very hard for our people to give a referral to someone that they know. And then I realized it really hit me like a ton of bricks when I realized the reason they join our community in the first place is because they're people that they're normally surrounded by in their workplace or their family or their
Yeah.
friends from high school, they're not doing what they want to do.
Yeah.
So it's almost like we created that safe haven to
Yeah.
really kind of put you in that cocoon of that mindset and
And you don't want
keep
people
a
turning
soft
down your
spot to take
ideas,
risks.
right? So, I mean, I
Sorry?
can see that as well. Like, you don't want people kiboshing your ideas, or people that don't understand things are not necessarily going to be supportive of you, right? And I found that
Naysayers.
even when as you know, I've gone through a lot in the last 12 to 18 months. And at the beginning of this year, I'm like, I can't stay in this state forever. I just need to put my head down, focus, set intentions, and really try to focus on reshaping my mindset so I can move past some of these significant things that have happened. And I think not only have things started to turn around, which is great, I also really have become sensitive to the negativity of others. Like, you really
Yes.
notice it when you're really trying to focus on, positivity and gratitude yourself, and someone's just complaining all the time or negative all the time. It's like, you have to, like, it amplifies it, right? So I
Yeah.
think you just have to, focus on what's important to you and focus on what your priorities and your goals are. And then at least you know where you're going. Like, I had a mentor that once said, if you don't know where you're going, you could end up someplace else, you know?
Yeah,
So I think you want to
exactly.
know when you get in the car, you want to know where you're going every day, right?
And you really need to protect your energy. And
Yeah.
so another fun story is When my father's very mad at me still, probably to this day, he can't understand why Vaughn and I did not tell my parents that we were investing in real estate the first couple years we were doing it. And it
Yeah,
wasn't a secret. I just literally didn't tell them because he is a very like Eastern European overbearing dad who
yeah,
was always this naysayer. My parents were such naysayers. I know they love
yeah,
me and they're trying to protect me, but they were the biggest naysayers and they never did anything to help me move forward to my goals. So I
yeah,
thought, if they're not helping me, why am I listening? So he couldn't understand why we kept that from them, but I needed to keep it from them
yeah,
to move forward.
yeah,
So I'm consistently protecting my mental energy. I don't listen to naysayers. I often, if people are too much negativity in a conversation, I will walk away.
yeah,
And because I have to protect, it even goes back to an old book. I wonder
yeah,
if you all remember this, The Celestine Prophecy.
yeah, I remember
Remember,
that.
I read that when I was like 18 years old, and they
Yeah,
actually, in a point of the book, talk about in a conversation, there's an energy that goes back and forth, and back, a healthy conversation would go back and forth. When there's an energy vampire and they're literally draining that energy, you can physically see the energy from one person being drained. And I'm very sensitive. I'm a real empath, and I'm very, very sensitive to the energies and to my emotions.
yeah,
Um, so I really need to protect it. And I did have to keep that from my parents, but they talked us out of our first deal. It's in our book,
yeah,
Real Estate Mistakes. We were 24 years old and we put $500 down on a lot for this property in Australia. And we were going to build, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't even know we were real estate. We weren't even homeowners. We weren't even married. And
yeah,
we were like, yeah, we went and met with a builder and Vaughn got pre-approved. And we were 24 and we were like, built this dream home on paper. And we were
yeah,
so excited and so ready. We came home and told our families, and they told us we were going to sink. And so we're like, oh my God, they must be right. And
yeah,
so we're like, give us our $500 back. We were so
yeah,
scared to lose this $500. And this
yeah.
developer didn't want to give it back. You could tell
Well,
just
I'm thinking in
he
Australia
knew
because
that.
it's so expensive there, right? Like I've got a
Oh
very good
yeah.
friend that's there. So I mean, when you think about probably what that was then to now, like
Or how about 2 years later, baby on the lap, married. Oh, I'm gonna look up this area. We were in this for $220,000, $1.7 million.
ah,
It was a blue
well, if
chip
that's not the
golf
push you
course
needed
area.
and the sign you
$1.7 million. I cried. I literally
yeah,
cried, literally tried to find the developer. I'm like, oh my
yeah,
God, like, why did we listen to my parents?
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, you got to protect it. You got to protect your mindset. That does not mean you're better than other people because they choose to do other things. We need to respect everyone, but you
yeah,
got to look out for numero uno, which is you and your inner circle
yeah.
families.
Now, since you do this with your husband, can you talk a little bit about that dynamic? Because I know in some instances in married couples, like sometimes they are in it together, and in a lot of cases, it's one person who's the driver and the other person really takes the back seat. So, can you talk about how you've navigated that successfully over the course of your marriage, but also your career?
Okay, I love that question. And so when we started out doing that, he was working full time and I was home with the kids. And we did all of our training together. And we took that very seriously and we made the decisions together. But because I was home and he was out, ended up with more of the front load of the work. But he
Yeah,
would come after like a 10 and 12-hour day and do it in the evening. So we were both
yeah,
hustling and grinding for the first little while to
yeah,
get through that. So that was all pretty equal. Because of that, I was meeting so many people and growing our community and doing these things that I've always been a bit more of the face of the community. And
yeah,
I'm naturally more out there and extroverted and yippy. And he is more the strong, silent decision maker in the back. So
yeah,
everyone thinks that I run things, but in reality, he probably makes the majority of those decisions because the decisions have to come out 50-50. There's never been a decision that we have not made that we're both in it 100% together.
yeah,
And I love that because we will hammer it out like just ideas and whatever. And it's not pretty all the time being married and getting these things out, but we're not
yeah,
scared of each other. And we speak very freely and openly in an open forum. And so every time these decisions come to play, it's 100% both
yeah.
satisfied. So I
Awesome.
love that about us. And with most people at RPI, we do tend to have mostly married couples.
Yeah,
And normally, I always, always, always encourage both of them to come on the coaching, or at least both of them to walk the
yeah,
properties and view the homes.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, sometimes the woman is in the front, or sometimes the man's in the front. A lot of the time, the man is in the lead. Naturally, this is more of a male dominated thing, but we want to get more females out there. And
yeah,
I do drag the wives in and I say, your wife is invited to come to everything. I would like her to be
yeah,
part of it. And I don't think out of the hundreds of people that we've coached, I do not think that we ever had a subservient wife. And we certainly haven't had, if anyone ever says something saying, oh yeah, numbers are above me, or oh, he makes me rich, or he does all the decisions. I'm like, she needs to come.
yeah, yeah. I think it
She
definitely
needs to come.
there's value to that. I mean, speaking for my relationship, I'm kind of like you and I'm the driver, but my husband really hasn't been actively involved. And I think it is challenging sometimes when one person's being educated, you're the one learning the information, you're the one putting it into practice and stuff like that. And when things are good, they're good. But when things hit a rough patch, then obviously it can be really challenging where you
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot of guilt, there could be a lot of shame. I think it's the kind of thing that can rip in some cases marriages apart. Like there's one
Yes.
woman I was talking to that we're in some of the same situations and she's like, "Oh, I'm just grateful my husband hasn't divorced me yet," because again, she's the one immersed in the community and then they're
Mhm.
experiencing all these really significant challenges. Like
Yeah.
they should be retired right now and they're doing Uber Eats because they've lost like probably between 1.5 to $2 million that, they were making passive income off of and now it's all up in
And
the
if
air,
he was
right?
to say to
So,
her, this is all your fault, then she should probably divorce him.
and I'm not saying that
Because,
he
yeah,
said that, but I
he
mean, I'm
obviously
sure
didn't,
like
but
it's
he
natural
feels that guilt.
to feel that guilt, right? But it's
That's why
hard
you
when
need
that
that
person is
stamp
just
of approval.
not that, right? Like when I started educating myself, I couldn't drag my husband to anything,
Yeah.
like he was just like, that's a weekend in the summer. Like I would rather be at the cottage than at a conference. And I'm like, so it
How
kind of
many
fell on
women
my
put all
shoulders,
their
right?
trust
So
into men to make all that wealth, not even real estate related? Think about those ultra wealthy families, and those women
yeah,
are laughing their heads off, thinking whatever, and then they get left. This is the thing, like a healthy marriage or a healthy dynamic. Two people do not have to be equal partners,
yeah, yeah,
but you have to tell them what you're doing, first of
yeah,
all.
yeah,
And then they need that stamp of approval. So I'm sure even though you're doing
yeah,
most of the courses, most of the strategy, I'm sure you let them know, hey, we
yeah, of
got this
course.
place. And,
Yeah,
or I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? And the problem really, the only problem I've seen, because when you're married, you can never go back and be like, I told you so, or blame someone for that. He loves you, just like this woman's husband loves
yeah,
her and believes in her
yeah,
and loves her. So let's talk about back to that pain when the pain supersedes. In this case, it's reversed. The love supersedes and the belief in someone.
yeah,
You could do it. I'm going with you. You
yeah,
can never, ever, ever go back and say, ooh, I told you so, or oh, how could you?
yeah.
That's just such a bad
No,
move.
I know. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, it is challenging when it's kind of like one person is more actively involved and one's not, because
Yeah.
they'll never have necessarily the same context you did that brought you to make those decisions, right? And then if
Right.
things again do fall off, like because they weren't maybe as involved from the get-go, it's kind of
Yeah.
hard to
It's the
understand what's
naysayers.
happening.
It's
And
when you have one person who's like, yeah, let's do it. And the other person's like, no, it's too risky.
yeah,
That is the most common dynamic I see that
yeah,
won't work. And that's where I'll tell people, you guys need to work out your marital arrangements before working with you, because I'm not going to be I'm not going to talk anyone into anything.
yeah,
I can't talk people into things. And I said, I think that you need to get your husband or your wife on board and
yeah,
comfortable, and they're welcome to join in, and I could talk to them
yeah,
to be that second voice of reason.
yeah,
But until you're both on the same page, I don't even feel comfortable. Because in those cases, you got to be really careful, because say if something does happen and
yeah,
then the other one comes in and is like, got us in this investment, it's your fault or something.
yeah,
So you
yeah.
don't need that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely challenging in that respect. Now, when it comes to things like generational wealth, what kind of structure have you set up? Because you do have four children.
Mm.
So, in a lot of cases, people might create family trusts or they might have an infinite banking policy. Like, can you talk about how you're planning to eventually pass that down to your family and what kind of structure you're using?
So basically, all of our real estate and our holdings are in a real estate holdings structure and holdings company. And then we have all of our active income completely separate in an operations company. And we have multiple corporations that hold multiple different areas of real estate. So we'll have these all for like Ontario, through Western Canada, through the US, and these sort of things. So
So
all
the
the real
holdco
estate,
owns all of the subsidiaries?
the holdco owns the realco and the operating company.
Okay.
So then the holdco actually is where also holds is where the true wealth is where the insurance policy
Yeah.
is also, and two actually. So then we both have infinite banking, and our
Yeah.
kids have their own infinite banking as their
Yeah.
first step to wealth.
Yeah.
So when they turned 18, they have their own advisor and their own policy, and they pay for that
Yeah.
every month. So that's their thing. And then we plan to do that with the other two children as well.
Yeah.
And eventually we will definitely, depending on what happens with the portfolio, because you never know in real estate investing, it will be transferred to a trust for the stuff that we want to go down. So
Yeah.
how do I feel about trust structures is probably your thing. When you created a specific amount of wealth and you are planning your estate plan, and you're getting older, and your portfolio is more established, like maybe a lot of your properties are paid off, you don't have
Yeah.
mortgages on them because you don't want to pass something down with a mortgage,
Yeah.
really to someone else. So when that gets a little tidier and you're more certain of what it is you want to keep and what you're still, because sometimes you're still acquiring, that's when you decide, what am I going to put into a trust, and start gifting almost the properties for the kids. Because
Yeah.
I see a lot of people put it into a trust really early on. They keep a trust. Like a friend of mine actually did this for their cottage they're building. They bought a cottage in the trust for the kids.
Yeah.
And now the one kid has like signing authority on this property, and now they're rebuilding it, but they're paying for everything.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't put them in the most tax, positive preferential
Yeah.
situation either. They don't have really control over their asset. So I like holding in corporate structures until then doing the great wealth transfer,
Yeah.
then doing the trust. And that's why you
I
need to
don't,
have these people on
you
your
just
wealth.
mentioned not passing down a property with a mortgage, and obviously it's really popular to refinance, take the equity out. Do you know how it would work if you refinanced a property to take that out so that it's, you're not necessarily taxed on what you take out on a refi? And then when it, if it doesn't necessarily pass down, meaning like the people that are taking it over don't want to keep it, they'd rather sell it. Wouldn't they then have like a lot less of a capital gain impact? Like if they sold it and, you know, say the property was worth $1 million and $800,000 was taken out on a refi, so there's
Mhm.
only $200,000 in equity. So technically when you sell it, then you only have $200,000 in proceeds versus a million. Do you know, like, is that a tax efficient strategy, or do you know any loopholes, not like loopholes, but like tax optimization around something like that? Because it may not necessarily make sense to pass down like 25 paid off properties.
Yeah, exactly.
Sense?
Well,
Like,
okay, no. So okay, so in the trust, when they put the things, say if you had this properties, whatever, that were paid off, you
yeah,
transfer it to a trust, and then you put them in the name of the trust. There is no sale at that point. So as
yeah,
long as there's a sale,
right,
then you're not going to be, that's just the transfer
right,
of the properties. That's the whole purpose of the trust structure,
yeah,
is they're going in that. So that's to avoid the taxes. So you wouldn't
yeah,
want to do anything with a mortgage when you're putting those properties in that trust. Now, when you're buying, like the number one question people should be asking people, and there's a lot of older investors out there that are selling off their portfolios to outsiders.
yeah,
Yes, like that's when you want to ask them that famous question, would you hold a mortgage on this? Because
yeah,
then
yeah,
they're able to still have control over that asset,
yeah,
and they're able to receive income from it every month. And that is a very tax preferential strategy for sure.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was just trying to think like, I mean, you don't necessarily know when you're going to pass away, right? But I'm just trying to think like if maybe your beneficiaries don't want to hold on to the properties, like, sometimes that stuff can fall off as things get passed down and stuff like that if people
Yeah.
aren't as
And if
committed or as engaged in it as you were.
absolutely, and then you can plan for that in your trust too. So you could have like a caretaker for the
Yeah,
properties in there, and
yeah,
pre-plan for that in that estate planning.
yeah,
Okay, like I want them to have these assets because I want this to pass down to like my grandkids and my great grandkids and all that sort of stuff. And I
yeah,
always want this in the thing, but I'm going to assign a caretaker, to that property, and a specific fund here, money that's
yeah,
always going to pay for this property. and
Yeah.
cover for it. And this caretaker, and the caretaker could be a lawyer, it could be an accountant, it could
Yeah.
be whatever, and hire someone in advance from when you're alive. So it's almost like you're directing from the grave. Because you can't expect your kids to take over your lives and
Yeah. Yeah.
your things. Like you can't expect them. They might not want to do what you want, but what are you trying to do when you're passing this down is you want them to benefit
Yeah.
from the wealth. So if you notice that
Yeah.
your kids are just not that into it, that's cool. But plan for it in advance to see if maybe you are better just selling everything and doing everything, or maybe because you don't want to give your assets all to one kid too. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you'd
Yeah.
have your
It's
kids
tricky, especially
fighting.
when there's more than one child, right? Like, and I have seen that
Exactly.
go create challenges like in other families where things are passed down and it's like one person wants to keep something, one doesn't, and all the different issues can ensue at that point.
It's best, real estate is a huge responsibility, and if you're giving someone a gift, you shouldn't give them a responsibility.
Yeah.
You should give them the gift and then have all that other stuff taken care of.
Yeah.
So maybe even have like someone else managing or doing it all, and your kid, they just basically get the good stuff.
Yeah. Now you're
Hmm.
talking about infinite banking. I did have someone on that specializes in that about 2 months ago, but for anyone that's tuning in that has no idea what infinite banking is, can you talk a little bit about what it is and how you can use it to create wealth or protect your wealth?
Sure, for sure. And I'm not a licensed specialist, I'd like to say. It took me a long time to truly understand
Yeah.
how infinite banking works, and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
My main strength is to identify how infinite banking helps me as a real estate investor. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be speaking from this solely as a client,
Yeah.
and an infinite banking policy holder and real estate investing standpoint. So because there's so many different bells and whistles to this wealth vehicle that I don't even focus on, but my
Yeah. It
infinite
is
banking
confusing to
specialist loves
understand.
it. Exactly.
Yeah.
First thing is infinite banking is a concept. So it really is a concept that you can't go in there and buy an infinite banking policy. That doesn't
Yeah.
exist. It's just the infinite banking is concept designed by Nelson Nash.
Hmm.
So if your practitioner is not Nelson Nash certified, don't work with them, because he's the one that really mastered this. And it allows you to use it consists of a permanent life insurance policy, not just term, a permanent life insurance policy. And permanent life insurance actually can be used when you're alive, not just when you're dead.
Yeah.
And the downside to permanent, insurance is that it's very, very expensive. So everyone needs insurance. Like if you have kids, if you have everything, you need insurance. So normally term insurance, which might be $30 a month, permanent
Yeah.
insurance can be like $500 a month. And so it has this thing of being very, very expensive and all these different, not being able to use it and not people not cashing out, whatever. With the infinite banking, what it really focuses on is it lets you, or the IB Canada group is who we work with,
Yeah.
and they do a great job in helping you set up with a term rider and combine it with a permanent policy.
Yeah.
So you have two policies, and it really kind of helps keep the monthly premiums and the cost down. And you have to pay your policy either annually or you could do it monthly.
Yeah.
But basically, every time you're creating money, you're paying down your premium, you're creating money in your policy, but you
Yeah.
also have the right to overpay. And so say if every year I have a 36,000, say I got a $1 million life insurance policy, and I can put an extra 36,000 in a year, my policy say. And say I do a BRRRR or I flip a house, what I'm able to do is take some of the proceeds from that and I can overfund my policy.
Yeah.
But then I can borrow it right back out again, and I never have to pay this back
Yeah.
until I'm dead, which
Yeah.
is super exciting because what happens when you overpay your policy is my $1 million policy is now grown from $1 million to $1,150,000.
Yeah.
Still have to pay the same premium every month,
Yeah.
which is super exciting. So basically, what I do every year as an investor, if you're an investor and you have an income generating thing here that you can overfund your
Yeah.
policy, and even if you borrow it back every year, that you're actually able to, by the time I retire, my $1 million policy is going to be $8.8 million.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I've heard
that's
some
huge
pretty
wealth to
significant
pat, and
things.
that's tax free.
Yeah,
Tax
yeah.
down.
And that's the thing with, I think, some of the wealth transfer when you're talking about the gains that could be on a real estate portfolio and things that do transfer around, depending on your structures, this can be one way to protect it. But I know the advisor that you work with, and I have had some meetings with him, and he had such a great analogy where he talked about, if you're going to plant an orchard when you want to eat, you're not going to go cut all the trees down.
Yeah.
You're going to harvest the apples and they'll grow back so you can keep on, eating from that orchard for years to come, right? And that was a great analogy for infinite banking and
Yes.
just how people use their money, because the way that people are treating it is generally you get paid, you spend it. So it's almost like rent, right? So it's like rent compared to owning real estate in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. And if you really don't want to down active real estate, this is such an easy thing to create wealth.
Yeah.
You might create such wealth for your family
Yeah.
that you don't even have to pass down the real
Yeah.
estate. You can just sell it off or do whatever, and you're not even putting down a problem. This is just like cash for people, which is
Yeah.
super exciting.
Yeah, yeah, I think it has so many robust advantages. So I just wanted to dig into that a little bit. And I know we're going to talk about that more next week. So for anyone that's joining us, we can dive into all that in more greater detail. Now, in terms of building wealth, I know we talked a little bit about this with the financial literacy webinars, but for anyone that's just starting out, it's hard enough just to buy a single family home just to live in.
Mhm.
So what would you say are some of the simple tips to consider when somebody's just starting to get their feet wet?
Okay, so the first thing I think people need to do is they're richer than they think. So if you are, we created something called the real estate wealth cycle, basically what people need in their portfolio. So not every Canadian needs to be a real estate investor, but they need real estate in their portfolio. And all you need is 1 to 3 properties to help you achieve a multi-million-dollar portfolio, make more money every month, and help your kids out.
Yeah,
So it starts with your primary residence. And so either let's pretend you own it already, you're richer than you think, because you have to learn how to do strategic refinance and tap into that equity.
yeah,
With that, that's the down payment money that you're going to be using to buy an investment property.
yeah,
We're then going to use financing there to finance a BRRRR property. So there'll be some construction financing components in there.
yeah,
From that, you're going to increase the equity on this property, and you're actually going to be able to pull that money back out, or a portion of it, allowing you to either do whatever you want with it. Maybe you can go to
yeah,
a high-end wealth advisor and actually be recognized for a change and have more access to good products that are being monitored, not set it and forget it. Or maybe you want to buy another property and do it all over again.
yeah,
But you can create that mortgage recycling system. If you're
yeah,
not there yet and you don't have your primary house yet, you have to live somewhere. So you're either renting or you're living at home or you're doing that. So you basically want to be able to convert and buy your first property utilizing, once again, leverage. You can get a property with 95% down, but you have to buy a proper property, not a dream home. So
yeah,
gone are the days of white picket fence. You need a working home.
yeah,
So you need to find a property in a great area below fair market value that you're able to go in and add some sweat equity to. So let's pretend
yeah,
you buy this house for $500,000, but everyone else would have paid 700, but you're going to get it for 5, and then after you're done, it's going to be 1 million.
yeah,
So there's going to be a whole whackload of equity in there that you can either get a HELOC on or a new mortgage. It depends the mortgage agent. I'm not a licensed mortgage agent. They will advise the best way to move forward. We just help people create mortgage plans.
yeah,
From that point on, then you now have access to hundreds of thousands of dollars to make your next move for an income property.
yeah,
And that's what we teach people at RPI. Like, it's not about having 100 homes. If you have 100 homes, you have a real estate business, and that should be
yeah,
another facet to your wealth. And I often ask people who do have 100 homes, or who are fund managers, or who have family offices, whatever. I often challenge them too, because they're in it so frequently and they're so transactional for others. What
yeah,
have you done for yourself lately? Where are you in your portfolio? What do
yeah,
you do for? So there's always real estate for self and real estate for others and real estate
yeah,
with others.
yeah, yeah.
So we
No, I
really
think
got
that
to
makes perfect
compartmentalize
sense.
those. Mhm.
Now, in terms of looking back, if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice when it comes to money, mindset, or investing, what would it be?
Well, I would have definitely not listened to my parents when we were 24 with that house in Australia, because we would have been millions of dollars ahead, and it was a really beautiful house. It had a movie
Yeah.
theater and everything.
Wow.
We were really good house designers back then. We didn't even know what we were doing, but we
Wow.
dared to dream, and we were doing it without limits. We had like a no
Yeah.
caps mindset. We were just young, dumb, broken in love, and just kind of went through. And I think that's the approach most people should take in life. And I've always taken that. And that's why I don't ever have a life of regret.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I love that. Is there anything else that you'd want to add for someone that might be tuning in after the fact, since we didn't have anyone jump in with us today?
I would just say, check out RPI Education. Listen to this podcast and this Wednesday with Serena. Make her your favorite, and keep educating yourself. And if you want to call with either of us, we both love to talk to you and tell you more and see what you're at. We have a lot going on at RPI as in-person events, from stuff happening every other weekend by with group coaching,
Yeah.
website, blogs. Check us out. And when you're ready, we'd love to help you.
Awesome. And I know we're going to be back again for the next couple of weeks. So we're hosting a series of financial literacy webinars for Financial Literacy Month. So next Tuesday and the Tuesday after. This coming week, we're going to be talking about business structures, tax planning, and estate planning. And the following week, we're going to talk about mastering your mortgage and strategic leverage. So make sure that you register if you're tuning into this after the fact. And of course, thank you for your time for joining us for today. And remember, when you invest in yourself, the sky's the limit. Thanks again.